Hello, dear friends. We're sincerely happy to greet you again. Today we will have a conversation with the esteemed Igor Mikhailovich Danilov.
Greetings, dear friends. To start with, I would like to thank everyone who took part in the experiment that we called the Eye of God. I understand that everyone is waiting for our response. Many people have described it in great detail, but we are still collecting information. Thank you for continuing to write to us and participate in the experiment. Also, special thanks to those who invited their friends and acquaintances to take part in this experiment. This is also quite valuable and interesting. The opinion of those people who heard about such tools as the Eye of God and Vajra for the first time, who treated this experiment truly conscientiously, and did not listen to their consciousness, which said, well, you know everything anyway, or you shouldn't take part in this. But they really joined in. Why? Because your analysis and your experience is very valuable. Believe me, friends, we are indeed working on your descriptions, systematizing and studying them. Everything is good, everything is interesting, everything is wonderful. Yes, everyone understands that the result was expected, but we will discuss it in more detail in a separate video. However, I think many of you friends have understood what this technology is, what these tools are, and many have numerous questions about what to do with them. The main thing is that all of us have a clear understanding that these tools are needed. They will be able to help make this world a better place. But one question remains: how? It's a good question, and no one will be able to answer it without you. This is important and necessary. Thank you once again. Also, taking advantage of the moment, I want to express sincere gratitude to all those who take an active part in building the creative society, who are not shy, who step over their consciousness, go and talk to other people, to thank those messengers of peace and truth, honor and dignity, and a wonderful future. Many thanks to you guys. I thank those who tirelessly work for the sake and benefit of all people on this planet. I'm sorry for such a digression. I understand that Tatiana has been preparing, and as far as I understand, she wants to continue the series.
To expand the understanding.
Yes, to expand on the topics that we raised and began to discuss. They are not very interesting to me personally, but I understand that they are extremely important to you. Sorry for the digression. But I had to answer, because many of you, friends, already want to know the results. But we will return to them a little bit later. There are indeed plenty of materials. Everything has to be systematized. And as you yourselves understand, there are also a lot of other tasks that are urgent and require our presence, intervention, and sometimes quite serious and deep participation. Yet, we will certainly study everything. We allocate time specifically for that. I thank those who write to me personally and ask many questions. We remember everyone, and we know a lot, friends. Don't worry, we are aware of your inner states, and we also know about the process of struggle that you face, about your desires and aspirations. Believe me, our world is an ocean, and in this ocean, a wobble of even one molecule is reflected on the entire ocean. If you can read, it is all like an open book. Many of our friends feel and understand that as well. This is wonderful. It is wonderful that the world is changing, and most importantly, that the world is changing inside many people. Precisely inside. Why? Because those topics which we touched upon in the previous video about subpersonalities, about the invisible world, which for many people, under the dictation of their consciousness, seems to be science fictional and unreal. Yet everyone feels that this is the real truth. Everyone feels that it's exactly the way it is. However, consciousness doesn't really want people to understand in any way how the world is arranged and the way it really is. Why? Because a person who possesses the knowledge also possesses a weapon against the system. He can resist even the strongest enemy, which is his personal consciousness. Why? Friends, just because the devil has power only when you don't know about him, my friend, but when you know about him, he gets weaker. The weaker he is, the stronger you are. And you become stronger only when you gain experience. Having knowledge is good, but if you don't use it, it is meaningless. The same is in this case. Possessing the knowledge and gaining experience, you, my friend, become stronger and stronger every day. Yes, consciousness is capable, and sometimes it uses all its tools up to meanness, sinking as low as possible in order to draw you into this process of judgment, meanness, and all sorts of filth too. And the most grievous thing is that it belittles you, saying that you succeed in nothing, while you see that it's the demon, the messenger of the devil, who is telling you that you are weak and will not succeed. Remember, friends, if the devil has started talking to you, it means you have already achieved a lot. So, let's go back to our so-called interesting topic, but it is really necessary.
This is very helpful, Igor Mikhailovich.
Yes.
You know, in continuation of what you said, indeed, a lot of our friends who follow the spiritual path and sincerely strive for God discovered this background noise in themselves, and of course, consciousness hastened to comment on their spiritual successes, especially, let's say, not successes. It said that there is no success at all, that most likely the very presence and the very fact that a person feels in himself this background noise of subpersonalities, of the dead, indicates that he is going in a different direction. He is not going to God at all, but is moving farther away from God. Thus, it was very important to hear from you during the last conversation that if a human strives for God, if a human as personality aspires to reunite with his soul, he will definitely pass through that inner hellish crowd, through someone else's pain and someone else's suffering. Here we would actually like to clarify, to dot the I's and cross the T's for our friends. For those people who follow the spiritual path and work on themselves, is the very fact of the presence of this background noise of subpersonalities an indication that a person is moving away from God?
Consciousness is really trying to convince people of that. It begins to say, look, you lived peacefully until you started working on yourself, until you embarked on the spiritual path. You lived quietly. Everything was fine with you. Nothing worried you. You had peace inside, and that's where a lie slips through. After all, yes, sometimes we don't remember what happened even this morning, if it's already afternoon. But each of us lives in this background noise. Even if there are no subpersonalities, consciousness creates it, or third forces create it. All of us have a negative, unfavorable background, but it is greatly intensified by subpersonalities. And since we have such times, and let's say there are more inhabitants in hell than the number of us here in the intermediate world, it is natural that sometimes people have a lot of subpersonalities. Certainly, they produce a background noise if there are no strong subpersonalities, who even replace people. Consciousness begins to tell you that when you experience or feel someone else's pain, precisely the pain of those subpersonalities, you thus descend into hell. And where there is hell, there is no God. But it is lying. And the most interesting thing, I'll repeat again, is that every human feels that. As a matter of fact, you're not moving away from God. You're getting closer to Him. But you are moving away from slavery, which Satan has imposed on you. This is really true. You are separating from your consciousness. You start feeling yourself as personality. And this is worth a lot. When you break down into layers the entire structure which Satan made as long ago as in your childhood, and you begin to understand that you have started disidentifying yourself from Satan, this already says a lot. This indicates a tremendous success for you as a human. Why? Because you feel that this background noise is not yours. It's not a consequence of your actions or even of the work of your consciousness. You understand when consciousness begins to create negative moments for you. That is, you understand when it imposes bad thoughts on you, which will have consequences. You even understand when you get involved, fail to control your state in time, and you already fall into some kind of rage, maybe anger, at some point. Perhaps you might even start talking to people improperly. But even at this moment, you can observe from aside what you are doing to the dictation of consciousness, and that it is not you, and you don't need it. Well, that means a lot. It seems you are doing what consciousness wants, meaning it has imposed on you a scene of an argument with a near and dear person. But at this time, you see yourself from aside. Did you actually see yourself from aside before? Did you actually feel and understand that you are personality, that you are not consciousness, and not that demon who just burns your life away at a time when you are just sleeping and achieving nothing? He, this demon, is preparing a future out of you for himself, but not for you, my friend. Why? Because your future should be life eternal. Your future should be genuine, true freedom. Your place is to be worthy among the worthy, equal among equals. Your future should be life eternal, and not to be in slavery to some Satan for centuries. This is nothing. And even being in slavery to Satan, even being in a state of subpersonality, you, my friend, will still feed this system. You will still be a slave. And the more you have served him in this world, the bigger, or let's say, the rougher the belt or the whip this Satan will beat you with. Why? Because everything you did under his dictation, he will blame it all on you. Why? Because you are the one who did it, while he was just whispering. By our choice, we create life or death for ourselves. And this is very important to know and understand. On the spiritual path, you should not be afraid of those effects, let's say, or phenomena that you encounter. You should remember a simple thing. When you live in God's love and strive for it, when it is your true and only goal, the truest and the only goal, then you will definitely achieve it, no matter what happens during your journey. Remember one thing. When you're going towards God, you should walk with a firm step along a flat, good road and not pay attention to what is happening on the sidelines. Why? If we start looking at what is happening on the sidelines, we will get involved in this process and will become a part of it. This is exactly what Satan wants. It doesn't matter what tools he uses, third forces, our own consciousness, or our inexperience. By lying and deceiving us, he involves us in various everyday scenes, or in some situations in this three-dimensional world, creating some threats or troubles and fixating us on them. He eliminates the understanding that everything passes in this world. Literally everything. No matter how tough a situation is, it is finite. Why? Because even this world is finite. But if we do not turn from our road to the sidelines into these impenetrable jungles, into these labyrinths of our consciousness, but walk along a flat road towards sunrise, towards our future, towards eternal life, then all this passes much faster and easier despite all the efforts of our consciousness, all the efforts of that demon whom Satan gave us. He gave him to us not in order to torment us and make us suffer, and that's the whole truth, but in order to test us, to test our strength, whether we are worthy of life eternal, whether we can overcome all these obstacles, all this earthly chaos, whether we can come out as a mature personality, as an adult angel, and become worthy among the worthy, standing shoulder to shoulder in the infinite world. Or we choose simple ways. We choose what Satan dictates to us. We are tempted by something, or, more often than not, we enter into some kind of conflict that can completely absorb us to such an extent that we forget about God. Why? Because precisely when we are in trouble, when we are in conflict, no matter whether it is with ourselves or with other people, but at this moment our consciousness actually tells us, "Where is your God? And why doesn't He help you?" But what does God have to do with it when it is us or people like us who created this situation? We are involved in it only temporarily. And it doesn't matter how it resolves and with what result. What matters is where you strive. If you strive for God, then even the saddest situation, which leads to the end of our existence, is terrible only for a demon. While we will merely lose our bodies and gain life eternal, gain that happiness and that state which cannot be compared with anything in this world. This is really a blessing. This is really happiness. These are really tremendous opportunities for creation of good. This is the true, pure God's love, part of which we become after gaining life, life eternal. Believe me, to focus on something bad means to put a seal on yourself, the seal of a mortal. Whereas to seek and cultivate God's love in yourself, to be, first and foremost, a human, to think not only about yourself. If you start thinking about yourself, my friend, you will simply get lost in this chaos of existence and become part of this temporary, dead world. A human must live by God's love. He must become a part of God while still being here. Then eternity is guaranteed for him, while everything else is futile. But sometimes, yes, consciousness draws us in, creates some kind of noise and chaos, you know? I would compare it to a simple, banal situation. Imagine that you live and have noisy and rowdy neighbors living behind the wall. But they are not even from your apartment unit. They are from another section of your house. You just have a shared wall for the two apartments. They're always making noise and arguing. You understand that injustice is taking place there, that lawlessness is taking place there, and chaos is being created. And there is one small point here. It is important. If you get involved in this process of quarrels and fights, drinking parties and debauchery, then it becomes part of your life. But if there is peace and God's love in your apartment, if there is the future in your apartment, then you can make the music louder, see the goal, and not notice these bad neighbors, because in your apartment there is peace and God's love. The same applies to this background noise of the dead or third forces, no matter who it is, even the devil himself. He doesn't have power to change your choice. However, he has slyness, he has seduction. But that's why you are given a choice. That's why you are given reasoning. And your thoughts should be controlled by you. And your actions should be controlled by you. If God lives inside you, there is no room for the devil there. Remember this, friends. And then, when you are with God, even the devil himself is no danger to you. However, if you pay attention to the lives of your neighbors, if you worry about them, if you worry about their future, let's say, then you lose your own one. Everything is very simple. With God, everything is really simple. Sometimes, yes, anything can happen in life. We often make mistakes. And you know, when a person doesn't have the knowledge and understanding of this world, he has no experience, but he has an aspiration. And somehow a person embarking on this path at the behest of the soul, as they say, he as personality feels that his home is in the spiritual world, and he searches for ways to get there, and sometimes, without realizing, he really gains some understanding of the freedom of personality. And that's where a terrible thing begins for such a person. He begins to feel this background. He begins to understand that not everything is so calm in him. He begins to understand that he didn't order thoughts that come to him, that they are intrusive and powerful. He begins to understand that someone is controlling him, someone strong and powerful. People often perceive this as an influence from the outside and do stupid things. And sometimes these stupid things are fatal and completely change a person's future. Why? Because when a person perceives what comes from the outside as an attack on himself, he rushes to seek protection from the outside only by external actions. That is, we go and look for holy places at a time when there is a part of God in us. Friends, excuse me, but there can be no holier place than the soul for a person. But under the dictation of consciousness, of the demon that is being controlled by Satan, we go looking for holy places to protect us from those who are inside us. We stoop to magic. We use amulets, some rites, some actions, theatrical actions around us. We perform some rituals, prayer services, or something else. It is literally theatricality. But who said that God loves theatricality? God loves sincerity and not staged actions. A simple question. How can some amulet on your body that was given by some shaman who is a slave of Shaitan protect you from demons when the demon is inside you? Only because of ignorance and failure to understand the essence, and again, to the dictation of that very Shaitan in their heads. People thus condemn themselves to becoming the same background noise someday. A heavy, sad, and sick background noise for the future of a living person who has a prospect. Yet, it must be understood that even when you become a subpersonality, you remain a slave anyway. You will not gain freedom from consciousness, but you will gain the understanding that you are something different, that you are neither primary nor secondary consciousness, that you are not that hustle and not that demon who has been burning away your entire life and who filled all your life with disbelief, stupidity, fantasies and dreams you didn't need. When you are left one-on-one with your own consciousness in a very unpleasant position, so to speak, after you become a subpersonality, then you realize that all your life, all your running after some hoarding, after some attempts to improve something in a material sense, what you have spent your life on is so empty and so stupid at a time when you could have gained life You were listening to Shaitan, who was telling you, don't take this piece, take that one, it is sweeter. Yet, that sweetness is illusory. He also told you, don't make friends with this person, make friends with that one. And later on, you realized that the one he told you to make friends with was merely exploiting you. And in the end, he was far from being your friend. My friends, a friend is not the one who came from consciousness, but someone who resonates in your soul, just as God's love does. That one is a true friend. That person will take care of you and will not betray you, and in times of trouble, he will not turn away. For true friends are tested in times of trouble, when they share a misfortune with you, and not when they idly share a meal with you. That's the point. Shaitan is strong, and he misleads many people, and sometimes us too. Isn't that so? But he has no power over you, and he does everything and seduces you in every way just so that you, my friend, make a wrong choice, which will become your seal. Everything is simple. It doesn't matter whether there is a background noise inside you or not. It's unimportant. It's all meaningless if you have no goal, if you don't have God's love in you. But if you have God's love in you, why would you care who produces a background noise and where? As for passing through them, yes, you'll have to do it, because the way to heaven, strange as it may seem, lies through hell. If we look back into the past, even back then, this was talked about. A simple question, why was it known just recently? Why did the prophets talk about it? Well, we have simply forgotten about it. It's all because someone, sometime in the past, having no experience and no knowledge of how this world is arranged, simply divided. We are on earth. This is the mid-world. Under the earth, there is hell. And in the heavens, there's God's world. And we left for the external, even in our thoughts. We forgot about the internal. Although Jesus Christ talked about it, the Prophet Muhammad talked about it, and he described where Shaitan is and where God is. Where? In fact, in each person is the door to the world of Allah. We forget everything, but only when we listen to Satan. Therefore, my friends, we must listen to our Lord God, who communicates with us through love. Everything is very simple, but when we hear a voice in our head, we must understand that it is definitely not from God. Another important point, friends. I know it's hard to understand it, but there is a lot of talk about it now. There's much talk, but it's hard to understand. Everything we perceive it through the work of our neurons. We as personalities do not perceive this three-dimensional world. This three-dimensional world becomes the way we see it and hear it. We can even touch it, only because we have the so-called brain, the trivial work of neurons. It is enough to make small changes, and these neurons will give us a completely different picture. In other words, the entire reality of ours is contained in fantasies of our consciousness. Why? Because, strange as it may seem, precisely through primary consciousness. Again, this is the intermediate layer between the neurons of our brain and us as personality, where primary consciousness is located. You know, it's like in a computer. It is something that processes it all, organizes, and presents it to us. However, we also have secondary consciousness, which is like the internet, seemingly close by, but nowhere, yet at the same time, everywhere. And secondary consciousness is actually the real tool of Satan. We observe constant fight and opposition between the primary and secondary consciousnesses in ourselves every day, all the time. So, we, as personalities, can even observe the battles in our own consciousness. Secondary consciousness drags us, I would say, into such a long series of reflections and fantasies in our heads about our future, usually about our greatness, or, on the contrary, it belittles us in our illusory world, which is almost not different from the one our primary consciousness shows us. However, I'll tell you one serious thing, friends. The fact is that our fantasies in the head also have an effect on the world that primary consciousness tells us about, meaning our thought has power in relation to us. Therefore, we need to keep good things in our heads. Do not perceive what is bad and do not finance it. I'll explain. Any series, any scenes, any manipulative games of consciousness that come to us as personalities, which we as viewers watch on the screen of our own head, meddling into these fantasies like into some kind of an interactive game. You know, they actually have power, the power to change our reality. Therefore, I'll say the following. We do have power. We have real power given to us by God to accept these fantasies or not to accept them, to accept bad thoughts or not to accept them. So, if consciousness tries to impose some game on you, remember, if you live in an illusion, you lose God's love and you lose your future because you'll remain in the illusion. This is an extremely important point. The control of what you finance. Why? Because you, as personality, are the viewer who finances this entire theatrical performance in your own head. Imagine, instead of living, accumulating God's love, benefiting the spiritual world here, in this three-dimensional world, and helping other people. At this time, you, my friend, are paying for staged actions. As a rule, between primary and secondary consciousness, or in multi-layered secondary consciousness, there's a multitude of actors with lots of actions, and you are already an active participant of some series in your own head, in fantasy, about nothing, about empty things. It's one thing when your work requires you to think about something, and you exploit consciousness, and it's another thing when consciousness exploits you, taking you as far away as possible from the reality you are in, and making that fantasy, that nonsense, it has prepared in huge quantities, in many different combinations and variations, which can take away your life endlessly. And by getting involved and financing what is empty, you lose what is real. Everything is simple, friends. Likewise, all that background inside you is merely noise that has nothing to do with you. Yes, if you start paying attention to this background, just like to rowdy neighbors behind the wall, you become part of it, and instead of alive, you become dead. And instead of being sober in your apartment with your nice family, let's say over a nice dinner, in a pleasant conversation, you become a participant in a drunken brawl, some sort of a squabble behind the wall. Why exchange happiness for unhappiness? A simple question. Friends, it is better to live in joy and love, to live a truly plentiful life filled with happiness. Whereas happiness, friends, is God's love. If there is no God's love, nothing can replace it. This is true. Therefore, thank you.
Thank you so much, Igor Mikhailovich.
Thank you, friends. Let's just love each other. Peace be with you, and God's love.